The modern world did not emerge from gradual change alone. It was shaped by a series of decisive moments when governments, leaders, and innovators made choices that redirected global history. These events are all profoundly significant, but instead of ranking them by magnitude, the story unfolds in strict chronological order, tracing how each turning point set the conditions for the next. Number 8 begins in 1917 with the October Revolution, when the Bolsheviks, a revolutionary political party led by Vladimir Lenin, seized control of Russia during the turmoil of the First World War. The decision to overthrow the provisional government emerged from secret discussions within the party's leadership, who believed existing authorities could no longer manage economic collapse or military defeat. The takeover began with coordinated efforts to occupy communication hubs and government buildings in Petrograd, and proclamations soon announced a new socialist authority. Once in power, the Bolsheviks dismantled rival institutions, withdrew from the war, and began constructing a socialist state that evolved into the Soviet Union. The long-term consequences included the rise of a major communist power and ideological tensions that shaped much of the 20th century. Number 7 moves to 1919 and the Treaty of Versailles, crafted at a months-long peace conference in Paris following the First World War. Delegates from the major Allied powers negotiated the settlement in closed discussions marked by conflicting national interests. Germany was presented with terms assigning responsibility for the war, imposing territorial losses, restricting military capacity, and requiring heavy reparations. These conditions were enforced through occupation zones and international oversight. The treaty produced deep resentment and economic strain, contributing to political instability and the rise of extremist movements that helped lead to the Second World War. Number 6 turns to December 1941 when the government of Imperial Japan launched a surprise attack on the United States naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. This decision followed months of internal debate among Japanese military and political leaders who feared American sanctions and naval strength threatened Japan's expansion across East Asia. After secret planning and formal imperial approval, Japan's carrier fleet sailed under strict radio silence. The attack unfolded before any formal notice reached the United States, and its announcement framed the strike as a defensive measure. The immediate consequence was American entry into the Second World War, shifting the global balance of power. The long-term effects included Japan's defeat, the reconstruction of the Asia-Pacific region, and the emergence of the United States as a dominant global force. Number 5 focuses on 1947 and the partition of British India into the independent states of India and Pakistan. The decision followed years of negotiations among British officials and Indian political movements, including the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. Facing rising violence and limited post-war resources, the British government concluded that withdrawal and division along proposed religious lines was the most viable option. The plan was announced publicly with little time for preparation, and borders were drawn by a boundary commission led by Cyril Radcliffe. Enforcement began almost immediately, triggering mass migrations and widespread violence as millions attempted to move toward their intended state. These events shaped South Asia's political landscape and contributed to the emergence of two nuclear-capable rivals. Number 4 takes place in 1948 with the declaration of the State of Israel after a United Nations proposal to divide mandatory Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. Jewish leaders held internal debates on whether to declare independence as British rule ended, ultimately voting in favor. The announcement in Tel Aviv occurred on the final day of the British administration, triggering immediate military opposition from neighboring Arab states. The ensuing war produced shifting borders, large-scale displacement, and deep political fractures. Its long-term impact includes recurring regional conflicts, unresolved territorial disputes, and a central diplomatic challenge that continues to influence global affairs. Number 3 moves to 1949 with the creation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Extensive discussions among the United States, Canada, and Western European governments produced a formal alliance intended to respond collectively to the perceived threat of Soviet expansion. The treaty, signed in Washington, D.C., committed each member to mutual defense and was implemented through national ratification and joint military planning. NATO soon became a defining institution of the Cold War and established a security framework that still shapes international relations. Number 2 shifts to 1969 and the creation of ARPANET, an experimental research network funded by the U.S. government's Advanced Research Projects Agency. The decision emerged from proposals by scientists seeking a new method for long-distance digital communication. Government contracts supported the construction of early network nodes at universities in California and Utah, and engineers developed protocols that allowed machines to exchange data reliably. The first digital message sent in November 1969 marked the beginning of modern packet-based communication. Over time, new nodes and standardized protocols expanded the network into what became the global Internet, transforming economic activity, scientific collaboration, and daily life. Number 1 concludes with 1978 and the beginning of China's reform and opening. Earlier in his career, Deng Xiaoping had overseen industrial regions, traveled abroad on diplomatic visits, and studied foreign economic systems, giving him first-hand insight into how modern economies relied on practical management, technological modernization, and stable incentives rather than rigid ideological control. Drawing on these experiences, Deng convinced senior officials that major policy changes were needed to address stagnation and chronic shortages. Party meetings approved experimental economic zones, agricultural reforms, and policies allowing limited private enterprise and foreign investment. Implementation began in select regions and expanded as early results showed success. The long-term consequences included rapid industrialization, the reshaping of global manufacturing, and China's rise as a major economic power. Together, these turning points reveal how decisive political choices, strategic decisions, and technological innovations redirected the course of global history. Each event reshaped borders, institutions, economies, or information systems, leaving patterns that continue to define the structure of the contemporary world.